everybody, it is Melanie Mitro and Katie Ersta, and we are the hosts of the Make Chic Happen podcast.
And this podcast is for you, friend. We're going to dive into the skills, mindset, and systems you need to build a successful social media presence, and it supports your business goals.
All right, and I am Melanie Mitro, one of the co-hosts, and I have left my full-time career in early intervention to be a stay-at-home mom, and I'm seriously craving something more.
All right, and I'm Katie. I am a stage 4 cancer survivor. I absolutely love all things storytelling, and I was a teacher who truly just wanted to get the groceries paid for. Never in a million years did I see what would happen with this business.
Oh my gosh, and here we are, 10 years later, and we have built multi-million-dollar businesses from our laptop, from our kitchen tables, basically anywhere that you have Wi-Fi. And the cool part is now we get to teach other people how to do the same.
So just 2 female entrepreneurs who are wives, moms, and we're also besties who want to take you on the journey right alongside us to help you build a business that you love and a life that you desire.
All right, so come on in, check out today's episode. Hey everybody, it is Melanie Mitro and Katie Ersta of the Make Chic Happen podcast,
Yes.
and it is December. I know, and so we have our festive setup if you're watching this on YouTube today. If you are listening right now to the podcast episode, we've got the Christmas tree behind us. We're wearing our festive colors, and
I'm not, but yeah.
But you know, I'm always going to be theming it out, right? But no, here we are. We're kind of moving it. We are moving into the last month of the year, and with the holiday season, right in front of us, it's also a time of reflection. It's also a time where we start to think about what our vision and our goals are going to be for the next year. And so today, we wanted to really walk through vision casting, because vision casting is something that can be incredibly empowering, but it can be disempowering too, depending on the way you do it. And so we want to talk about some of the mistakes that we see other people make, because we want you, as you go into your own planning and just self-reflective time, that you can kind of keep these in the back of your mind.
Yeah.
So the first thing is, I just want to tell a quick story.
Yeah, sure.
And it's really, it kind of comes out of this place, and maybe you're like myself, and you were kind of like this too. When we first started our business 10 years ago, the first activity that we had to do was sit down and actually say, like, what are our goals? But it wasn't just like, what do you want to do in a month? It was, how do you want your life to be different? Like, imagine where you'll be 3 to 5 years from now. If you could have anything that you want in your life, what would you want? And I was sitting at the kitchen table. We had that high top, remember that high top table we used to have, and I was sitting there and I was reading Chalene Johnson's book. Well, I can't. Yes.
Yeah.
And that's really where she said, like, dream big. What do you want? And there was this weird feeling. I felt very conflicted, because I'm reading all of these people that are talking about wanting, the big house or the fancy vacation, and I couldn't fathom any of that, wanting the $1 million business, because up until that point, the first 28 years of my life, I wanted to be mom. I wanted to be the stay-at-home mom. I wanted to take care of my kids and just support my husband. And yes, I wanted to live in a nice house and have some nice things, but I never really said, what do I want? I kind of always saw myself as the caretaker. And so there was this uneasiness where I felt guilty for actually wanting things for myself. And I actually had a very hard time verbalizing, like, I want to build a business, at the beginning. So I don't know if any of you are sort of feeling that way, but if you've never built a business, if you never have dreamt big, and you're now in this season where you're vision casting and it's hard for you, I want to just allow you to feel that. That's actually an okay thing. It's normal. And it really was, because change means you're stepping out of your comfort zone, and that's what I was doing.
Yeah.
And so I had to write it a few times. I had to secretly, like, write it in my notebook and close it so nobody could see it, because I was embarrassed a little bit by wanting something more than just being a mom and staying home. But the more I practiced, the more comfortable I got, and the more I put my shoulders back and was confident in the vision part of it. But the first step is just being okay with the fact that it's okay to want something different or more or in a different way. And the first step is creating a vision for that. So I want you to, as we talk today, just to allow yourself to be a little uncomfortable.
Sure. And that kind of leads us into number 2, which is one of the biggest roadblocks we hit when it comes to creating a vision for your life and your business is you sometimes just don't think it's actually realistic to achieve that goal. So for me personally, when I started any of this, I came into it with the big vision of getting groceries paid for. And I was completely okay with that being the big vision because it was realistic for me. It was something that I really actually thought I could achieve. And I remember being on a call very similar to the call that Melanie was on. And when I was on this call, I remember it was a lot of Range Rovers, and I didn't even really know what that was. And it was beautiful, big houses. And for somebody who didn't grow up in that lifestyle and never really sought a lifestyle like that, that vision didn't work for me. It didn't actually fit for me at that time. And even today, that type of thing is not something that excites me. So for me, when I started, I really had to stay in sort of this big vision thought, but a realistic thought. And so my vision was the idea that I could hang out with my husband on a Sunday night and it wouldn't be over the Excel sheet and we wouldn't be budgeting for the 1 week ahead because that was really, really stressful for us.
Yeah.
And it was a big enough vision for me. It was more than enough because achieving that meant that I was succeeding and I was doing it on my terms. So if you're new to business, if you're a newer business owner or you're just starting out, what I would actually encourage you to do is to, number 1, look at your vision and ask yourself, okay, is this realistic? And then number 2, look for somebody who is like 1 or 2 steps ahead of you in the business and ask them. Actually look to them as a mentor or a guide, whether if you're in direct sales, this is somebody in your organization or your upline, and say, how much time would a goal like this take? How realistic is this if my situation or my scenario is this? And a big part of why we created the Make Chic Happen time blocker, the Chic Your Time blocker, is because you also have to be very realistic about the time you have to commit. And I know for me, I didn't have a lot of time to commit to really working towards my small business because I was working full time and I had a son in daycare and I was home being mom. So it was a little bit different for me. So my vision had to match what I actually realistically thought I could achieve so it felt doable.
Yeah. And then if you are somebody that has been in your business for, 3-6 months, right? And you do have a baseline.
Yeah.
And so when you're looking to the next year and you're saying to yourself, okay, what's realistic for me, going into 2022, the one thing you can do is you can look at your average over the past 3 or 6 months, or if you've been in the business longer, over the past year.
Yeah.
And you could say, okay, my monthly average for sales, whether it's you're going to measure it based off of sales or new customers or product launches, you can really say, okay, does it make sense? Is it realistic for me to increase that number by 10%?
Yeah.
When I look at that number, do I go, oh yeah, that's going to happen really without any additional effort? Or so then you raise it a little bit, right? Okay, so 15%. Ooh, that gives me some butterflies, but I feel pretty confident that I will be able to figure it out. We never want to set a goal that when we set the goal, we go, oh my gosh, we immediately go into, that's just not even possible. So we want to be able to take data, which is really important. Katie and I do this, like we get together multiple times a year, but we just did it in November where we sat down and we actually physically looked at the numbers from the past year and previous years. And then we said, this is the number we feel is doable going into 2022. And it was a stretch but we felt comfortable with that number. So you really do have to look at the numbers and you have to be reflective and you have to take a moment to go back and see where you're at. So you want to make sure that your goal isn't making you shut down. You want it to be a realistic stretch and a push for you outside of your comfort zone. You want growth.
Yeah. And you mentioned
Yeah.
3 to 6 months.
Yeah.
We do this 10 years into our business. We do have
Yeah.
a track record of historically what are the things that we've been able to achieve, what makes the most sense, is that
Yeah.
a realistic goal, is it going to push us a little bit, are there some things within the organization that we can do a little bit differently to yield a different result. So I do believe that that is something that no matter where you are in your business, whether you're just starting out or you're 10 years in like we are, you still should be looking at realistic goals that stretch you as well.
For sure.
So the third point, which I did touch on a little bit, but I really think it's important to note is your vision actually has to mean something to you personally. So we were on a podcast, we were recording a podcast with a guest a couple weeks ago, and he talked about like really having this big vision for your life and for your goals, and you can't, have a small, dream for your life. And I kind of paused in that and I kind of said, I do believe that it's important to have a vision, and I do believe it's important to have a dream big mentality, but I also think it's really important to have a realistic understanding of what it's going to take, and also it has to actually feel like it means something to you. And so going back to that point I addressed at the very beginning, when I was new to my direct sales company, we're Beachbody, and when I was new, I was kind of in awe of what this lifestyle was and how people were living. So if I could kind of take you back for a second, at the time, I was a middle school teacher. I was working all day. My life was surrounding myself around other middle school teachers and middle school students who, they're a little bit, quirky and funny anyway. And so then when I was introduced to this whole different lifestyle, I didn't really get it at first. I appreciated that these people were telling me about all the nice cars they could drive and the houses that they could live in and the money that they could make. But for me, those things were something that were so out of context because I had never had experience. I'd never known anyone like that. I've never seen anything in my own life like that. And so for me, when I started that vision that I started to create for myself, it didn't really mean anything to me personally. I couldn't feel myself in that lifestyle. I couldn't feel myself actually or see myself really doing those things or achieving those things. I really was just the girl who was like, man, it would be the most amazing life to get the groceries paid for.
Yeah.
And so the first mistake I made with vision boarding is believing in dream big mentality and not feeling like I was actually able to achieve it myself.
And I do want to ask you a question. So when that happens, when you, because you did create that vision board, right?
Yeah.
And then it was disempowering. And so can you just explain how it actually made you feel inside when you made this vision board, all these people around you were having these, and then it didn't feel how did that make you feel? Did you?
Sure. Yeah, I can walk through that. So I want to say that the night that I created the vision board, I still remember when I did it. It was great. Like I was like, oh, I'm gonna dream big, and I'm gonna drive a nice car, and I'm gonna get a house in the mountains, and I'm gonna do all these things.
Yeah.
And then when it came down to it, it was actually paralyzing because I felt so far away from that goal that it was easier for me to just push the vision board away.
Okay.
Like I didn't have to look at it. If I didn't have to look at it, it didn't exist. If it didn't exist, I didn't really want it. If I didn't really want it, I didn't have to work towards it.
Oh, yeah.
So what I did instead, and I think it was probably a conversation with you or somebody else in our organization, but what I did was I started to think about the smaller steps that it would take to actually get to the vision and blur out what that big vision was. Yeah. Because at that time, I was like, I don't actually think a cabin in the woods really means anything to us. I don't really think a bigger house means anything. I don't think a nicer car means anything.
Okay.
So what I did instead was I started to think about, okay, what does mean something? Not fighting over groceries meant something. Feeling like at the end of the week when I had a little bit extra to maybe go out for ice cream, that meant something. As my business sort of grew over the next coming months, over those first like 6 months, and I was able to actually do more than get the groceries paid for. I was actually able to put some in an emergency fund. That meant something. And so for me, getting to the big vision, and even still to this day, I get very realistic about the small steps in front of me, and I celebrate those.
Yeah.
So if
Yeah.
you're sitting here going, I connect with that, like I'd never had a vision board that actually stayed on my desk, or I never really had a vision board where I actually worked towards it or felt like at the end of the year I was able to achieve it, I would encourage you to actually start taking smaller steps and celebrating those smaller steps along the way. So because then you get really connected to the action, you enjoy the action, you enjoy the process versus the final product.
Yeah. And I love that because I think that there are different kinds of personalities out there, and we've been studying personality styles recently, and just you have to find something that works for every personality style. So, you might be a dream big, I want the big, vision, and it may not paralyze you, or you might be the person that I like the tangible that makes me feel good. Even though we're still working towards the same end result, it still is the big vision. It's just the way you get there.
Yeah. And what you enjoy about the way you get there, the actual process, because there is nothing wrong with dreaming big if you are excited about the action you have to take to get there.
Yeah.
But if that paralyzes you, then we need to take a step back and say, all right, we need to work towards smaller goals.
Yes. So, and the final step and the final thing I want to say is whether you create the big vision or the small steps, whatever goes on the vision board, the final step of that is, Katie can't just say, okay, getting the groceries paid for is on my vision board. That's what I'm going to do. But okay, great. We don't just put that on there, pictures of the groceries, right? And peace or, just freedom, like those words on our vision board. Now we need to say, so what are the steps that I need to take? And action is where 90% of people fall short. Is they spend December reflecting, refining, making the vision board, getting their desk set up, buying the planner for next year, and then they just stop. They don't take action. So now the final step of it is, okay, what are the actual income producing activities that need to go on my shake your time blocker that are going to actually make the money get deposited in my account so I can pay for those groceries? And so that is now where, as we think about our vision, we have to connect it to what the work looks like.
Yeah.
Right. And what the work actually, and so what is that? What are the things that I'm going to have to show up and do? Posting on social media, making sure that I'm connecting with new people, inviting, following up, all of that stuff. That's the nitty gritty that makes the vision come to life. And so at the end of the day, as you're creating your vision board, you're saying to yourself, okay, am I willing to do the work? I can create the vision board, I can manifest it, but I have to show up every day and take the steps to making it happen. And so that really is the last part. And again, a lot of people just make the vision board and don't think about what the action looks like. So it's actually putting it into the calendar. Yeah. Right.
So one more thing too, I think that we can tell them about our invitation, right? So we are going to be hosting a free class. We are going to talk a little bit about how to vision cast and what that actually should look like versus what you think maybe or what you're in the habit of doing. And this webinar, this free class, is actually designed for people who may in the past have taken that vision board that they've created for themselves and found it in a closet or somewhere crumpled up in a drawer at the back of their desk. This is really for you to keep your vision at the front and center to remind you of what you are working towards, so that when business does get hard, which it does, you have that reminder. And so that information can be found right in the show notes down below. So if you want to reserve your spot, if you want to share the link, if you loved this podcast episode and want to share it with your business partners or your team members, let them know that there is a free event that is coming up, and we want you there because we really want you to help. We really want to help you vision cast in a way that feels authentic to you.
Absolutely. All right, you guys, thanks so much for hanging with us today, and we'll see you back here next week. So if you loved today's episode, make sure you head over to wherever you listened to the episode today and leave us a rating and review. And also take a little screenshot and tag us on Chic Influencer. We'll feature you in our stories. Plus, we'd love to get your feedback and hear from our listeners.
Yeah. Until next week, let's make chic happen.